The sun feels good on the back of my hands. It warms the old wood of this park bench. A simple thing you'd think a man could just enjoy. Over on the grass, a young couple is teaching their little boy to walk. He takes a wobbly step, then another, before tumbling onto the soft ground. They laugh, a sound so light it almost floats, and scoop him up into their arms. There's no fear in it, just joy. And I find myself wondering, what does it cost to learn how to fall like that? Not the child, but the parents. What is the price of believing, truly believing, that the ground will always be soft when your child lands? They don't seem to be scanning the edges of the lawn. Their shoulders are relaxed, their attention fixed on the small miracle of their son's first steps. They are entirely present in that moment, unguarded. For most of my life, I believed strength was about being ready for the hard look, the quiet dismissal, the sudden shift in the air that tells you you're not welcome. You spend so many years learning how to stand tall, how to brace for an impact that might never come, but always could. It's a heavy education. It takes a long, long time to unlearn that kind of posture, to even consider that the most important lesson isn't how to brace, but how to land. It takes a long time to unlearn that kind of tension, to let your shoulders finally drop after a lifetime of holding them high and tight. Some lessons, I suppose, just need more seasons than others to fully sink in. My name is Harold Eugene Mitchell. I'm 80 years old now, and I've seen enough sunrises and sunsets to fill 100 storybooks. And if all those years have taught me anything, it's that a man's name is just a placeholder for the stories he's collected along the way. The real truth isn't found in the name, or even in the number of years you've been given. It's in what you learn to carry. And, more importantly, what you finally give yourself permission to set down. I remember one summer day, must have been back in the late 60s. The heat was the kind that stuck to your skin, and my boy Marcus, he couldn't have been more than 5. He was all worked up about going to the big public pool for the very first time. Tea time. I can still see his face, eyes wide with the promise of all that blue water. Chuckles. For him, it was a simple thing. A hot day meant you go swimming. That's all. I wanted that for him. I wanted a world where the biggest worry was whether the water would be too cold when you first jumped in. We packed our towels, and I held his small hand, feeling the pure, uncomplicated excitement buzzing right through him. We walked through the gates, and the air changed, not the temperature, but something else. It was thick with the smell of chlorine and sunscreen, but also with stairs. You learn to feel the difference between a glance and a stare. A glance is just seeing. A stare is a question. As we walked toward the edge of the water, a woman sitting on a lounge chair with her own little one instinctively pulled her child a little closer to her side. It wasn't a big, dramatic gesture. It was small, almost unconscious, like pulling your hand back from a hot stove. But it told me everything. In that tiny movement, she told me I was the heat. Then there was the lifeguard, a young man, probably not much older than a teenager, perched up on his tall white chair. He saw everyone, of course, that was his job. But his eyes didn't just pass over us, they settled. They lingered. With the other families, his gaze was a sweeping, protective thing. With us, it felt like an assessment, a weighing of some invisible scale. I found myself standing a little straighter, making sure my smile for Marcus was broad and easy, performing the part of a harmless father enjoying a day out. I was no longer just a man with his son. I was a representative, and I had to make sure I represented us well. Marcus finally touched the water, letting out a squeal of pure delight as he splashed his hands. He was free in that moment, completely lost in the magic of it all. I knelt by the edge, laughing with him, but my joy was a thin veneer over a coiled spring of readiness. My head was on a swivel, not just watching my boy, but watching the watchers. I was listening for a tone of voice, waiting for a word, preparing myself for a confrontation that might never come but always felt possible. The sound of my son's laughter was the most beautiful thing in the world, but I could barely hear it over the noise in my own head. We left a couple of hours later. Nothing happened. No one said a word to us. No one told us to leave. By all accounts, it was a successful first trip to the pool. Marcus was tired and happy, and he talked about it all the way home. But I was exhausted, and not from the sun. I was tired from the weight of being ready. I had spent the entire time standing guard over a moment of joy, and in doing so, I had lost my own share in it. It was a quiet kind of theft, the kind you can't report to anyone because, on the surface, nothing at all was ever stolen. For years after that day, I told myself I'd handled it right. I kept my son safe, I let him have his joy, and we walked away with our heads held high. That was the story I clung to. But the truth is, a part of me was furious. I was angry at that woman, at that lifeguard. But mostly, I think I was angry with myself for having to be so careful. I felt a deep shame that I couldn't just be there, that my love for my boy had to be filtered through a performance of harmlessness. I had to smile when I wanted to scowl. Back then, I called it dignity. Now I see it for what it was, a cage. That night, Marcus fell asleep with a smile on his face, and I sat in the dark living room feeling like I'd run a marathon. There was this burning in my chest, a fire made of words I couldn't say. What would have happened if I'd met that lifeguard's stare with my own anger? If I'd asked that woman what she was afraid of? It would have cost Marcus his happy day, and it might have cost me much more, so I swallowed it. I swallowed it all down and called it strength. It's a strange thing to win a battle that nobody else even knew was being fought, and to feel like you lost something important anyway. The hardest part to admit even now is the fear. I was afraid, not for my own skin so much, but for his. I was terrified that his first memory of something so wonderful would be tainted by a single ugly word or a gesture he was too young to understand but old enough to feel. So I built a wall around that moment with my own tension. I became the guard at the gate of his innocence. It worked for that day. But you do that enough times, year after year, and you start to forget what it feels like to live on the inside of the walls you've built. You just become the guard. My wife, Eleanor, she carried her own kind of weight, just in a different way. She was a baker, and Lord, she had magic in her hands. Her sweet potato pies could make a grown man weep. She had this dream of opening a little shop of her own, nothing grand, just a place to share her gift with the neighborhood. When she decided to go to the bank for a small loan, she prepared for it like a general going into battle. She wore her finest Sunday dress, had every single paper filled out in her perfect handwriting, and for weeks she rehearsed her pitch. I remember sitting in our old Ford waiting for her, watching her walk in with her shoulders back and her head held high. She looked so strong, but I knew what that posture cost. She was in there for what felt like an eternity. When she finally came out and got back in the car, she was smiling, but it wasn't her real smile. It was a brittle, tired thing that didn't quite reach her eyes. She told me later that the loan officer hadn't been mean or anything like that. He'd just been surprised. He spoke to her slowly, she said, like he was explaining something terribly complicated to a child, and he kept calling her business plan ambitious, as if it were a cute little hobby. He approved the loan, but he never saw her. He saw a curiosity. She got what she went for, but the victory felt like it had been stripped of all its sweetness. Eleanor won that day, just like Marcus and I won our day at the pool, but she was exhausted from the performance. She had to present a version of herself so perfect, so unassailable, that it left no space for a single question or doubt. There was no room for her to just be a smart woman with a good idea. She had to be an airtight case. We both learned how to do that, to build those cases for our own simple humanity. We come home at the end of the day, having succeeded in the world's eyes, and sit in the quiet of our home, two soldiers tired from invisible wars. The real cost wasn't in what we lost, but in what we had to carry to get there. For most of my life, I believed dignity was something you wore on the outside, like a well-pressed suit. It was about how you carried yourself in a world that was always watching, always judging. Eleanor and I, we thought our strength was in our performance. We had to be twice as good, twice as composed, just to be seen as equal. You hold your head up, you don't let them see you sweat, you swallow the anger, and you call it grace. I was proud of that. I truly believed that this heavy armor of composure was what made me a man of worth. It was a shield I polished every single morning, convinced it was protecting me, my family, our very right to exist. But sitting here, with all these years behind me, I see it differently. That armor wasn't dignity. It was a cage. The real theft wasn't that the world demanded this performance from us. It was that we gave it so willingly, believing it was the only way. The truth, as I see it now, is that dignity isn't a performance for anyone else. It's a quiet agreement you make with yourself. It's the right to be tired, the right to be soft, the right to feel a moment of pure, simple joy without first scanning the room to make sure it's safe. It's the permission to just be, not strong, not ready, not composed, just human. That's the truth that settles heavy in an old man's bones. All those moments I spent being ready, I wasn't really there. I stood guard over my son's happiness at that pool, but I never truly shared in it. I was a sentry, not a father. My focus was on the potential threat, not the present beauty. And I've come to understand that the greatest strength isn't found in how well you can brace for a fall. The real courage is in finally believing you have the right to land soft. It's the quiet, profound realization that your piece does not require an audience's approval. It was yours all along, waiting for you to simply claim it. Sometimes I watch the young folks when they walk into a room for a job interview or meeting. I see it in their posture, the same way Eleanor used to hold herself. Their shoulders are back, not with ease, but with a kind of rigid preparation. Their smiles are bright and quick, but they don't always settle in their eyes. They've learned the same lesson we did. You have to present an airtight case for your own worth. They carry their degrees and their accomplishments like a shield, hoping it's enough to deflect any doubt. I see them perform in that careful dance of being impressive but not intimidating, confident but not arrogant. It's a heavy, invisible uniform, and I wonder if they know how much it weighs. Then there are the quieter moments when I see that look on someone's face. The cashier at the grocery store after a customer was rude for no reason, or the nurse on her rounds who just absorbed a sharp word from a patient's family. It's a flicker in the eyes, a brief tightening of the jaw, and then it's gone, replaced by a professional calm. They swallow it, they smooth it over and carry on with their day because that's what you have to do. I recognize that silence. It's the sound of a small battle being fought and won on the inside, a battle no one else will ever see. And I understand, maybe more than most, what a victory like that can cost a person's spirit over time. It makes you wonder about all the small moments we give away to readiness. The minutes you spend bracing for a conversation instead of just having it. The beautiful sunset you don't fully see because you're busy scanning the street on your walk home. We learn to stand guard over our own peace, and in doing so, we sometimes lock ourselves out. I don't have any grand answers for it. All I know is that now, when the sun feels warm on my skin, I try to let that be the only thing I'm feeling. I ask myself if this moment truly requires my armor. More often than not, I'm finding the answer is no. That permission, it turns out, is a quiet thing. Over on the grass, the little boy is walking again. He manages 4 whole steps this time before his legs get tangled up in his own ambition, and he sits down with a soft little thump. His parents cheer as if he's just crossed a finish line. I'm still here on this bench, watching. A little while ago, I saw a world between them and me, a lifetime of ease I couldn't touch. But the story has changed in my mind. I no longer see it as something they have and I don't. I see it for what it is, a choice. In this small sunlit moment, they are choosing to believe the ground is soft. They are giving themselves permission to be unguarded, and I'm realizing that permission isn't granted by anyone else. It's claimed. At the start of all this thinking, I wondered what it cost to learn how to fall with that kind of trust. Now I believe I know. It costs you the weight of being ready. It costs you the armor you spent a lifetime polishing until it shone. You have to be willing to set that shield down right here on the grass and have faith in your own 2 feet, not to stand tall, but just to feel the earth beneath them. For most of my 80 years, I couldn't imagine paying that price. But here, today, I'm beginning to understand that it's the only currency that truly matters. I can't get the other moments back, but I can have this one, right now, and I don't have to be ready for what comes next. You spend a whole lifetime learning how to stand up straight. You learn how to take a hit, how to hold your head high when every muscle in your neck wants to let it fall. The world teaches you that strength is about how much you can carry without breaking, how well you can build your walls against the wind. Everyone claps for the man who can stand tall in the storm, the one who doesn't flinch, but nobody ever talks about the cost of standing for so long, of holding that posture year after year, decade after decade. Nobody tells you that the real freedom isn't in withstanding the storm, but in finally giving yourself permission to come inside and sit down. It took me 80 years to understand that, 80 years to see that my shoulders were tired, not from the world's burdens, but from my own constant preparation to carry them. The peace I was looking for wasn't out there somewhere, waiting to be earned or won. It was right here, inside me, buried under all that armor I thought was keeping me safe. It's a heavy thing to carry, that shield. It protects you from some things, yes, but it also keeps you from feeling the simple warmth of the sun on your own skin. The heaviest thing a man can carry through his life is the weight of being ready. I don't know your story or what kind of weight you've been taught to carry through this life. We all have our own version of that armor, I suppose, polished and heavy from years of use. But if these words of an old man have stirred anything in you today, maybe you'll just sit with that feeling for a little while. Perhaps you'll even share this thought with someone in your life who looks like they've been standing guard for far too long. Not to give them an answer. Lord knows I don't have any of those, but just to sit with the question together. It seems to me that these are the conversations that truly matter, the quiet ones where we help each other remember it's all right to finally set the shield down.